Autoline Live from the Washington, D.C. Auto Show is brought to you by our signature sponsor, Bosch. The number of clean diesel models in North America will double by 2014. Bosch Clean Diesel. Good, clean, fun. And also by Audi. Truth in Engineering. And now, live from the Washington, D.C. Auto Show, here's John McElroy.
Thanks for joining us here, folks, from the floor of the Washington, D.C. Auto Show. We've got a great show coming up, pretty strong lineup. We'll be going for a little bit over an hour, and joining us in this program is going to be Phil Murtaugh, the CEO of CODA Automotive. We'll have Jake Jones, the Executive Director of External Affairs and Public Policy from Daimler, Lars Ulrich from Bosch, Dave Zukowski, the Head of Sales for Hyundai, Roland Hwang from the Natural Resources Defense Council, Frank Scambati from Bosch, and we'll have a few others who are going to be showing up during this program as well. Got to thank our media sponsors who are carrying this show, embedding it today: DCAutogeek.com, ACarPlace.com, DrivenMavens.com, WardsAuto.com, TheVirtualDriver.com, AutomotiveTribune.com, CleanDieselDelivers.com, Wheelspin.tv, RumbleStrip.net, and AutoblogGreen.com. Love having so many people joining us today, and we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with my first interview, Phil Murtaugh from CODA Automotive.
The clean diesels are coming. The number of clean diesel light vehicle models offered to North Americans will double by 2014. When given the choice, 1 in 3 customers choose clean diesel over gasoline engines. Why? Because of lower total cost of ownership, recouping premium costs in less than 18 months, longer range and better fuel mileage, lower CO2 emissions. Clean diesel, good, economical, functional. Bosch, invented for life.
Fix it or find a new job, all right?
I got it. I'm sorry.
These people, huh?
You know, I found that anger is the enemy of instruction.
You don't know the egos that I have to deal with.
You're probably right.
Thank you. Whoever you are.
I'm pretty sure that was Phil Jackson. It's quite famous. 1 million championships, triangle offense innovator.
The Audi A8, named Best Large Luxury Sedan.
Nice wheels, Zen Master.
Thank you.
Well, joining me right now is Phil Murtaugh, the CEO of CODA Automotive. Phil, thanks for joining us on this live webcast.
John,
here.
Thanks very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, so tell us what's going on at CODA. There may not be a whole lot of people who really know exactly what's going on, but you're developing an electric car that you're going to be selling on the west coast of the United States to begin with. Give us the status. How are things going right now?
We'll just start off with introducing CODA. CODA, we're a clean energy technology company headquartered in Los Angeles. We have a joint venture with Lishan Power Battery Company out of Tianjin that manufactures a specific use automotive lithium-ion battery cell. We use that technology to build an electric vehicle. We sell EV propulsion systems to other guys who want electric cars. And we use our battery technology for energy storage purposes. Where we're at right now is we're very close to launching our car. Our car is roughly 20% U.S. content. If you talk about clean energy cars, we have the highest amount of U.S. content with very few exceptions, 2 exceptions. But you take a look at Prius. Prius is 100% non-U.S. Nissan Leaf, 100% non-U.S. So although we do sub-assembly manufacturing in China, we have a very high amount of U.S. content. Our first batch of saleable vehicles is in Benicia, California right now, undergoing final assembly. We will start delivering these vehicles to customers in California in late February. By the end of 2012, we will have opened up distributorships throughout the United States.
Now, one of the claims to fame on your electric car versus the others that are out there right now is you have a much bigger battery, hence a much bigger range. And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, what we focused on was how do we convince people that they can buy an electric car and not have to worry about going to grandma's and then not being able to get home. We have actually now 2 different battery sizes. We will launch with a 31 kilowatt hour battery that has range up to 125 miles. And then later this year we'll introduce a 36 kilowatt hour battery that has a range of up to 150 miles. I think what distinguishes us from other pure EV manufacturers is that we have focused on developing battery management technology and thermal management technology that allows us to maintain consistent range. So our goal is to be able, in our 31 kilowatt hour pack, you'll get up to 125, and under good conditions, if you drive carefully, you can get 125, but in almost all conditions, you'll get between 90 and 110 miles. Our goal is dependable range. When you get in the car, know that you can go where you're going and come back. We do that by a combination of our BMS and thermal management system.
What's BMS?
Battery management system.
Okay.
Sorry. We actually acquired a company called Energy CS mid-2011. Energy CS is one of the globe's leading battery management developers. The guys who started Energy CS, they're the guys who did the battery management system for the original Chevy EV1. And they've been doing battery management technology ever since. We believe that we have class-leading propulsion technology given our battery management and thermal management systems. The thermal management system, what it does is it maintains the battery temperature in a range of 20 to 40 degrees C, which is where batteries really operate optimally. And what our technology does a little bit differently than other guys, not only the pack, but every cell within the pack, we maintain in that temperature range.
Now, when you make these claims of driving range, 120 miles or so, we've seen other EV makers claim something for their car that when the EPA finally tested the car, they said, no, it doesn't go that far. We've seen that happen with the Leaf, the Volt, and even Fisker.
No, you need to be careful. The EPA does something very interesting with electric vehicles that they don't do with gas vehicles. The range test is driving the vehicle through the gas engine MPG test, the city cycle test, the highway cycle test that they do for gas cars. They measure this. They measure the city mileage. They measure the gas mileage. You know, one's 19, one's 26, and you get a combined 22. In EVs, the EPA came out with a brilliant way of measuring city. You get if you get 150 miles in the city and you get 100 miles on a highway, the average is 125 miles. Then they multiply by 75%. So your EPA range is only 100 miles. So there's a little bit different approach that they took with EVs.
But shouldn't any EV manufacturer come out claiming mileage that's actually going to show up with what the EPA says it will get?
Actually, they do. Nissan Leaf, you'll look, Nissan Leaf has an EPA posted mileage. You actually can't sell an EV until you get an EPA rating.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is Nissan came out and said the Leaf will go 100 miles.
Yeah.
And the EPA came out and said, no, it's
71.
like 70, 71. Yeah, okay.
The EPA range is 71. Leaf will get well over 71 in certain conditions.
Right.
In other certain conditions, they won't. I'm not here to talk about Nissan. The Leaf's a great EV, and we hope that Leaf does well with the EV because that'll help CODA, that'll help Tesla, that'll help all EV manufacturers. Fact of the matter is, our 31 kilowatt hour battery will go maximum 125. Okay. Normally it'll go 90 to 110 under almost all conditions, even when it gets very cold. What sets us
that's
apart,
where I was going. And
what sets
keep
us
going.
apart from other guys
good.
is our thermal management system. We can decrease the temperature dependency of range. You have seen reports from unsatisfied customers of other EV manufacturers that they only get 40% of the published range or 50 or 60% of the published range. We won't get 100% of the 125, but we believe that we'll pretty consistently get 80 to 90% range attainment regardless of thermal conditions outside.
How do you handle it? Is it an air or liquid cooling heating system?
We have an active air thermal management system. We decided on air versus liquid for a variety of reasons, but we believe that's the right approach. And as I told you before, we developed some proprietary technologies that give us a closed loop airflow system that maintains every cell within the entire pack at a consistent range. So what happened? The reason that you lose range in a EV, our battery pack has 728 cells. Another manufacturer has over 6,000 cells in their vehicle. If all cells are operating exactly the same, you'll get that 125. But what will happen is, through temperature variations, through the cells aren't exactly the same, manufacturing variability. If you start getting cells operating a little bit differently, that dramatically reduces the overall efficiency of the pack. Our battery management system and thermal management system, the technology allows us to keep all the cells operating in a very, very close proximity to each other. That's how you optimize the efficiency of the pack, and that's why we get dependable range.
Very interesting. Now, there's been a lot of controversy over the Volt with this crash test that NHTSA did. Has that made you go back and make sure your battery is actually going to get through this with no problems?
We actually, from day one, have been focused on safety. We've been 2 years in development. We've actually had issues. We tried to make them happen because we want to know under what circumstances is it possible to have an issue that you wouldn't want to see. So we worked very hard over 2 years. What I will tell you is we think the Volt's a very safe car. We think EVs are as safe or safer than any other car on the road. To be quite honest, I think the media kind of blew the Volt issue a little bit out of proportion. They passed the crash test. They passed the battery containment requirements. They passed everything. One thing that didn't happen after the test was the battery wasn't drained of energy. That's a required part of the test procedure. If you run a crash with a gasoline-fueled vehicle and you leave 5 gallons of gas in the tank and let it sitting around for 3 weeks, and somebody goes by and smokes a cigarette and tosses it, what do you have? I think GM took a little bit of bad publicity from the media for something that really was a non-issue. NHTSA and GM worked real hard to try to see if, geez, is this going to be a problem? I think it took them 2 months to be able to duplicate what happened. I mean, the Volt's, and recently NHTSA came out with their final ruling. Volt's a safe vehicle.
Hey, we've got a question here from one of the people in the chat room. Herman the German wants to know if CODA sources components like the battery and the glider, i.e. the car that you're putting it in, from other suppliers, what's your core competency? I think you've been touching on this.
Our core competency is the technology development around how do you manage energy going into the battery, coming out of the battery, and the thermal management really is part of that. But energy management development is where our core technology is, and as for an EV, that's really what's most important.
Where do you see sales going for the car? I mean, you said that you're just finally assembling the ones that are getting ready for sale. what kind of demand do you foresee?
Well, last year EVs in the U.S. we sold 20,000 EVs. If you count Volt as an EV,
Right.
which is really
Yep.
not, but 20,000. The first year of hybrid sales between Honda and Toyota was 5,000. I think, and the other fact that's absolute fact is demand far outstripped supply in 2011. All the problems that unfortunately all of Japan had a massively negative impact on Nissan and significantly hurt their sales. I think that demand is far greater than supply in 2012 and going into 2013. I'm not talking about what our volume targets are. I believe that's proprietary, but we're not concerned at all about finding customers. They're going to find us. We'll be able to sell as many cars as we can manufacture.
That's great. And you'll start selling them when?
We start delivering cars to consumers end of February.
That's great. Well, Phil, we're going to have to wrap this up, but as I mentioned to you before the show, we're going to get you back. We got to get you on Autoline After Hours where we can devote more time to talking about CODA.
I look forward to it, John.
That's
Thank you
great.
very much.
Thanks so much for coming along.
Bye.
We'll be back with our next guest in just a moment here. Welcome back. I'm speaking right now with Lars Ulrich, the Director of Marketing for Diesel Systems at Bosch. I should call you Mr. Diesel, actually. Great having you back here, Lars.
John, thanks for having us here.
So, what I've been trying to track down about diesel engines is how many were sold in the U.S. market last year. It's hard for me to find the data. You must have that number at your fingertips.
We do. We have about, for the passenger cars, it's about 110,000. And that's about up 27% from last year. So that's a significant increase in growth in diesel passenger cars.
Now, when you say passenger cars, would that include SUVs, for example, that have diesels in them?
Exactly. That includes all models which are currently available, like the BMW X5, the Mercedes-Benz M-Class, the Volkswagen Touareg, for example, as well the Volkswagen Jetta, the A3, the BMW 3 Series, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So what you're not counting is the heavy-duty pickups that have
That is correct. That's not including the 2500 and 3500 pickup medium-duty sector.
In which case, the diesel market is actually quite a bit bigger.
Exactly. It would be much bigger. It would be probably an additional roughly 300 to 350,000.
That's a lot of diesels.
And that's a lot of diesel. That's adding up to roughly 3% of market share in North America, which is a growth from last year by about 0.2%.
Wow. That's a huge growth.
That is a huge growth in a fairly small sector. And we see in general the consumers are really starting to become interested in clean diesel because they understand the benefits and they see the benefits at the end of the day in their pocketbook.
As you and I have talked about before, and as you pointed out to me, European and U.S. diesel emission standards start to converge 2014 or 15 and run like that for a few years. You must be really looking forward to when U.S. and Europe are kind of the same in emission standards.
We actually are. In 2014 timeframe, we see this crisscross between Euro 6 and to a Tier 2 bin 5, which is currently out there. And in that time frame, pretty much the emission regulation between Europe and the US are aligned. And that's when we actually see the maturity of vehicles also coming to North America. We currently account 25 clean diesel passenger vehicles in North America, or models in North America. And that number until the 2014 time frame will double. So we'll have double as many vehicles in the market as we have today by the 2014 time frame. And if you look at it from a brand perspective, we have by the 2016 time frame roughly double as many brands in the market as we have today.
So, and of course that means it's more than just the German brands that will be offering diesels then.
That is correct. It's more than the German brands which offer clean diesel. The German brands have basically started in 2009 introducing clean diesel technology, and now we have other very important brands coming into the market, like for example the Chevrolet Cruze, which certainly will be a game changer in the market. The Chrysler Grand Cherokee, which also will be a game changer in its class. And I'm sure we'll see many more vehicles coming to the market. Mazda has announced a vehicle coming to the market. Cadillac at the New York Auto Show announced a vehicle coming to the market with clean diesel. So we'll see more and more brands coming into the market and actually participating in this growth.
Well, it's going to be very exciting to watch that growth because, as you know, I've been, and a lot of my colleagues are big diesel proponents.
Yeah, I mean, diesel certainly has its advantages, not only from a fuel economy perspective, where you have 30% better fuel economy, but also from a total cost of ownership perspective. And those are the major factors which consumers really start to understand. They can actually save money with this technology compared to, for example, a gasoline vehicle. And in average, to give you a number, about a 3-year period, you can save with a clean diesel vehicle up to $3,600 US, which means in less than 18 months, you basically have a positive contribution to your total cost of ownership.
So even though you may pay more for that diesel engine, you'll make that back in 18 months.
Exactly.
And that's just in fuel savings.
And that is fuel savings and residual value.
Oh, and residual, okay.
Exactly, and residual value, which plays a big role into this as well, just based on the durability of the engine, longevity. And those are factors which consumers start to understand, especially now that consumers are more trending towards purchasing vehicles after the economic recession in 2008.
Very good. Well, Lars, thanks so much for the update. Really appreciate getting it. And like I said, I can't wait to see the kind of growth that you're talking about.
John, always a pleasure talking to you.
Very good. And folks, I'll be right back in a minute with Jake Jones, the Executive Director of External Affairs at Daimler. Thanks again, Lars.
Thanks.
Yeah.
The clean diesels are coming. The number of clean diesel light vehicle models offered to North Americans will double by 2014. When given the choice, 1 in 3 customers choose clean diesel over gasoline engines. Why? Because of lower total cost of ownership, recouping premium costs in less than 18 months, longer range and better fuel mileage, lower CO2 emissions. Clean diesel, good, economical, functional. Bosch, invented for life.
Fix it or find a new job, all right?
I got it. I'm sorry.
These people, huh?
You know, I found that anger is the enemy of instruction.
You don't know the egos that I have to deal with.
You're probably right.
Thank you. Whoever you are.
I'm pretty sure that was Phil Jackson. He's quite famous. 1 million championships, triangle offense innovator.
The Audi A8, named best large luxury sedan.
Nice wheels, Zen Master.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Speaking right now with Jake Jones, the Executive Director of External Affairs and Public Policy at Daimler. We had you here last year. Great having you back again this year, Jake.
Thanks, John. It's a pleasure to be here. As always, I'm always happy to talk to you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Hey, we were just talking a little bit before you came on here. You mentioned that President Obama, in his State of the Union address this week, talked about what he's going to be doing for American car companies and the like, and you got something to say about that.
That's exactly right, John. This is this whole age-old idea of what's an American car company. I think clearly if you look back 40, 50 years ago, then it meant something very distinctive. It really meant the Detroit-based companies as an American car company. But the way in which things have changed over time, it's not so clear anymore what's an American car company. Honestly, we like to think of our company, Mercedes-Benz, as being a German-American car company and very American. We have down in Alabama a facility that employs almost 4,000 people. And we're producing Mercedes-Benz for export all around the world. For example, this past year we made 180,000 vehicles in that facility, 90,000 of which were exported abroad. We are the #1 exporter of vehicles to China from the U.S., which is absolutely amazing. Now, if that doesn't make us American, I don't know what does.
Right. Well, here's a good question. Here's a good litmus test. American cars have been hit with an additional tax by the Chinese government. Has that impacted Mercedes as well?
That's exactly right. Mercedes-Benz is included in that as well. And
so the Chinese consider you an American company.
That's exactly right. I mean, they're looking at, which is interesting. You know, we make, down in Alabama, we make 4 products. And I'm being optimistic when I say 4 products because the C-Class doesn't technically start until 2014, but we still consider it.
And we should
to be
emphasize
very American.
that. You've just
exactly
announced
right.
recently that you'll be making that car in the U.S.
That's exactly right. I mean, all of the products that we make, the GL class, the ML class, and the R class are only made in America. Those products are made in Alabama. We send quite a few of those, particularly the R class and ML class, to China. And so the Chinese consider us to be American, and so we're subject to the same tariffs. But as you mentioned, and I alluded to, starting in 2014, we actually are going to be making the C-Class in that facility in Alabama. And we've also announced that we will be adding a 5th product to that factory in Alabama as well. And that product hasn't yet been identified, but we know that there's going to be a product there. And every single one of those products are going to exceed the 62% NAFTA content requirement. So in our minds, those are clearly American products. They're made by Americans, they made in America, and they exceed the content requirements.
And I hear what you're saying, but make no mistake about it, Daimler is a German company. So you do have an important component of the company that's American or based in the United States. But come on, right. Daimler's a German company, and I don't think you want to lose that perception.
That's exactly right. That's part of the heritage. I mean, our company's been around making cars for 125 years. And as the company that invented the automobile, we continue to be innovators in the future. But what we don't want to ignore is that part of that heritage and part of that what makes Mercedes Mercedes is also now an American portion as well.
Yeah, and Mercedes has been in the U.S. for a long time.
That's exactly right. I mean,
long time.
Most people don't know. Actually, we were actually importing cars and doing it with Steinway in New York a long time ago, the American Mercedes-Benz. So we've been doing this, you're right, for a very long time, and particularly in the United States.
Hey, we've got a couple of quick questions for you here. What's the ideal scenario for sales of Smart? That's got to be something that Mercedes needs or Daimler needs for a cafe standpoint to offset the Mercedes cars.
That's exactly right. And Smart has been sort of, once we got past the initial success, the sales of Smarts have been rather difficult. And so we only sold 6,000 Smarts in the U.S. last year. We've got some projections this year where we hope to be more successful than we were last year with sort of a new marketing campaign. Part of the way in which Smart is being distributed has changed. It was before with the Penske Group, now it's part of Mercedes-Benz USA. So we're optimistic we can be successful with the Smart. But it really does require some refocusing and thinking about, okay, what are the options that are available for Smart? I thought actually at the Detroit Auto Show, there was actually a lot of buzz created for our Smart concept, the Smart for Us. So,
which was a little kind of pickup truck-like electric vehicle.
That's exactly right. As best described, it was still the whole concept of an open bed and 2 people up front. So it's a great approach, and hopefully this is the start of a lot of American customers starting to reconsider Smart.
Well, Jake, I could talk to you for another hour, but we're going to have to wrap this up.
Okay,
Nonetheless, thanks so much for stopping by with us.
Great. Thank you, John. I really appreciate it.
Real pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Coming up next, we'll be talking with Dave Zakowski from Hyundai. Stick with us.
Okay.
Welcome back. I'm talking right now with Dave Zukowski, the Executive Vice President for National Sales of Hyundai Motor America. Great having you here, Dave.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that.
And we were just chatting before you folks came back on with us. I had picked Dave as in our, if you all remember from Autoline After Hours, when we had our own draft, our own dream team, if we were to start a car company, and I picked Dave to be my sales guy because you're just doing a wow of a job in the industry.
Thank you very much. And the fact that I was Mr. Irreverent, the last person picked in the draft, didn't bother me. I just happened to be picked.
Right. Well, you know, I joke with people that you must have the easiest job in the industry because, man, your sales just skyrocketed last year.
It doesn't feel that way, but I get that question a lot. But no, it's been a really good 4 years. And what's interesting is it's happened in really a tough time in the industry, right? I mean, the economy collapsed, the industry collapsed. But when you're positioned like Hyundai is, with good value, good warranty, great quality, good fuel efficiency, and more recently, beautiful styling, not a bad place to be.
But you had some environmental things, let's say, that helped you.
Yes.
The Japanese had their legs kicked out from under them.
Right.
If you go back 2 years earlier, 2 of the big 3 were in bankruptcy.
Yeah.
I think that really helped Hyundai, and you're not going to have that kind of help now.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly aren't banking on another tsunami or anything like that. We were very concerned last year. We have global capacity constraints as well, and we were very concerned last year that we would run out of product, and we got a bit. It was a bit fortunate for us because we didn't really get hurt in the summer because everybody else was out of product too. So yeah, we've had a stable exchange rate, which has helped us for sure. We've had our key competitors. You couldn't plot out a business strategy that says when we launch one of our most important vehicles like Sonata, it's almost at exactly the same time that Camry goes through some of these recalls. You just can't plot that stuff out. Right. And then you go into all sorts of huge out of control issues with earthquakes and tsunamis. So yeah, that is obviously helped us, but it's been really driven by good, solid product, a great strategy.
And you've been riding the crest of the wave in your product cadence.
Right.
But now you've got the Azera coming out this year.
It's right? Actually, I mean, the difference is the actual cadence is more aggressive this year than it has been in the last 2.
Is that right? I thought you were going into a bit of a dip now.
Yeah, it's just not core vehicles. So we started 2 years ago with Tucson, and it doubled Tucson sales. Then you come out with Sonata, and it doubled Sonata sales. Then you come out with Elantra, and it doubled Elantra sales. Then you come out with Accent, and it doubled Accent sales. And those are all big volume vehicles. This year, Azera, not a big volume vehicle, important vehicle, not a big volume vehicle. And then we just introduced in Detroit redesigned Genesis Coupe, and we just came out with the Veloster, which is a very cool car, and we announced that it's coming out with the Turbo, which is awesome. We go to Chicago, we'll announce a Elantra Coupe and an Elantra 5-door, which are both sensational. A lot of people bring coupes out to make their 4-door look better. We don't really need that with ours, but it's a sensational looking car. And the 5-door replaces the existing Elantra Touring, much more European looking, beautiful car. And then you go into the summer, and there we've got a big vehicle launch. We're going to start building a new Santa Fe, which from a family resemblance standpoint, Elantra to Sonata will get you Tucson to Santa Fe. Beautiful car, very urban looking, just beautifully styled.
So you're not going into a bit of a dip in your product cadence?
John Krafchick talks about 7 new products in 11 months. So our product guys are pretty busy, but they're smaller volume products. Up until we get to Santa Fe, they're not huge volume products.
Right. How's it going with the Genesis sedans? You know, you took the Hyundai brand into a much higher price level, into a much more kind of different segment than you've been in it before.
Right. It's been great. It's the Hyundai. We all know the Hyundai perception hasn't been I'm going to go into a Hyundai store and look for a $35,000 vehicle. The absolute best thing that happened to us right upon launch of the vehicle was North American Car of the Year for Genesis, which really gave us the credibility that said we can play in the stage, we can build cars in any segment that'll compete globally, and the Genesis has been really strong, and it's in its third year right now. It's getting ready for a refresh, but we had a record sales volume year last year, and what it allowed us to do was to bring Equus into the market. So Equus is our flagship vehicle, and it starts at $58,000, and the success of the Genesis, and we got a lot of questions about Genesis. Was this another Volkswagen product?
Like the Fiat 10.
Like the Fiat. And our answer was, we sell $30,000 vehicles right now, and this will be a $33,000 vehicle, so it's not a big walk like the Phaeton was. And so it's proven successful. It's allowed us to bring in Equus. Equus has proven successful. So now premium vehicles, vehicles that are $35,000 to $65,000 are not an insignificant piece of our business. And that is the quickest way to raise your brand, right? Is bring in a different type of buyer, a different demographic. It changes the way people look at your vehicles. It puts you on shopping lists you may not have been on before.
Well, I haven't looked at Equus sales. What are they running at?
We did. Now? We had planned to sell about 2,300 last year. We ended up about 3,100. We'll do 35 or 3,600. Not a big volume piece, but it's an image car.
What are you learning from doing that car? What is that taught, if you will, the Hyundai system?
Great question. So we made a conscious decision when we came out with Genesis that we weren't going to do what Acura and Infiniti and Lexus did and create a luxury channel. We just, I'm not sure if given a chance to do it all over again, they would have done the same thing. But for us, creating a showroom within a showroom was the better way to go to market. And when we brought out Equus, every dealer got Genesis. With Equus, not every Hyundai dealer got Equus. Only ones that did a good job with Genesis and were willing to provide a showroom within a showroom and meet some other standards. So we've got about 350 dealers that market Equus. And when we brought the vehicle out, we tried a whole bunch of new things that we hadn't tried before. VIP service, where we'll go out to your house and pick up your car and bring it in. And it's things that we'd like to see how they work. It's almost, with those small volumes, it's a test bed. You can try things, do they work or do they not work? And if they work, can we then matriculate that across the other vehicles? If it makes the customers happy, let's do it on all of our cars. Yeah. So it's really been a test bed for us.
Cool. Hey, we've got some questions coming in from the audience right here. Darren Hussey from Newark, Delaware says, it's a comment. He says, good job, Hyundai. Keep up the good work. Consumers benefit with strong competition. So there you got a fan for you.
Thanks, Darren.
Let's see. Brian from Northville, Michigan says, what is Hyundai doing to help dealers grow the fixed side of the business, both to sustain dealership profitability as well as retain customers on both ends?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really one of our priorities. So this year, our rate of growth will slow down just out of necessity. We just don't have enough cars. We've been doing double the industry growth levels. This year, we think we can improve our sales 8 to 9%. We think the industry
will be
still
big growth.
It's big growth, but when you look at it from a market share standpoint, it's probably going to be pretty flattish.
Gotcha. Right.
So it provides us an opportunity, sort of like the import constraints did for Honda and Toyota in the 80s, to fix other pieces of our business. We understand it's a cyclical business. You're not always going to have the hottest, most beautiful product, and when you don't, you have to have a real solid foundation to get you through those down cycles. Our guys historically haven't done a good job on used vehicles, because back when Hyundai started, a Hyundai was $10,000, a used vehicle was a competitor, so they didn't do both, they did one or the other. And now that the price of our cars has gone up, transaction prices are up, it's opened up a whole new market on certified pre-owned. We're spending a lot of time working on certified pre-owned to help their profit center into the stores. Same on fixed operations. Good news is our cars don't break down. Bad news is our cars don't break down. So many stores look at the store and say, we'd like to have fixed absorption, the ability of service and parts expenses to cover overhead expenses at about 65%. We run closer to 48, 49, 50%. And we don't do a good job getting people back to our dealership for customer pay work, for maintenance and light repair. And for Hyundai, when they don't go to your dealership on their first service visit, we've lost them for good. They're gone. They don't go to another Hyundai dealer. They just go to the aftermarket. We don't see them again. So we are working very closely on new service initiatives this year, talking about the handoff from sales to service, the introduction to service, the dentist office type of process for scheduling the first service appointment, express lube, those things like that, to drive more customer paid business in our stores. Because we really do, from the ability to retain our service customers and grow them for future vehicle sales, we need to do a better job at point of sale, and that's really one of our key strategies this year.
Okay, real quick last question here. Where do you see your growth continuing? Is it new niches with like the Velociter, which Brian says he loves, or is it more geared towards continuing growth in the segments that you're already in?
Yeah, I mean, we'll identify new niches. Velociter is a great example of a new niche that's just been a surprise car for us. It's very cool. It brings in people we've never seen before, but at the end of the day, it's 30,000 vehicles a year. Our growth is making sure we have industry-leading vehicles in the compact segment, in the mid-size segment, in the entry segments, and that's really what we've been about. And if we do a super job on premium vehicles, it's still 10% of our volume. So think Accent, you think Elantra, think Sonata, think Santa Fe. Those vehicles having great styling, great performance, great fuel economy, great quality. That's, I think, where we're long-term going to continue to make our hay.
Gotcha. Well, it's going to be real exciting to watch you guys again this year.
Yep.
But Dave Zukowski, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you very
much.
Real
pleasure.
John.
Yeah,
appreciate
you
it.
bet. Okay, folks, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back.
Thanks, John.
Welcome back. I'm talking right now with Roland Hwang, the Transportation Program Director for the Natural Resources Defense Council. Great to have you here, Roland.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Always fun to talk with you.
Oh, great.
Hey, so let's bounce off some of the news that came out this week. You saw the President's State of the Union address. He started talking about, doing more energy in the United States. Oil and natural gas were especially things that he mentioned. What did you take away from that?
Well, I took away from that speech was that he started off with talking about the amazing, remarkable recovery of the auto industry. And one of the key foundations to that recovery, of course, is the new fuel efficiency standards and the agreement that the Obama administration brokered in May of 2009 that gave the auto industry the foundations for their recovery, gave them certainty for their planning, and it helped them prepare for last year's record high gasoline prices, record high gasoline expenditures. It's amazing, John. Last year, sales, profits, jobs, and fuel efficiency are all on the rise. It's very remarkable. The U.S. auto industry in particular, the domestic automakers back on their feet with fuel efficient products really help them thrive in the face of these really high fuel prices.
Yeah, they're high right now. I think you would probably argue that we're going to see them go higher still, but I'm wondering, again, going back to what the president talked about is U.S. oil production. There was a headline in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week that oil wells in the United States are gushing. We're getting so much more. What happens to the fuel economy standards if the price of oil really doesn't go much higher than it is right now on an inflation-adjusted basis? Because doesn't that make it hard to justify the extra cost for the CAFE standard?
Well, don't forget that even with the enhanced production of U.S. oil, the U.S. has 2% of the world oil reserves. We consume 25% of the world oil. We're never going to be able to control oil prices. Other countries that have all the reserves will always control the oil prices. But that's exactly the reason why we need long-term certainty with fuel efficiency standards, because it's very difficult for General Motors or Ford or for Chrysler or any auto company to plan for what fuel prices are going to be in 2015, much less June of 2012, right?
Right.
So, but the problem is that with high and volatile prices, when the prices spike, as you know, consumers flock to fuel-efficient products. The rate of change in the consumer market is very rapid when the oil markets change. It's completely out of step with the auto industry's planning cycle. They need 5 years. A drivetrain, a fuel-efficient drivetrain, advanced drivetrain, 10 years.
Right.
Maybe even 15 years.
Maybe 20.
Maybe even 20, maybe. But the key is that we need to ensure that the U.S. auto industry has the right products in the face of very uncertain oil prices. It's the regulatory certainty of fuel economy standards which has really benefited the U.S. auto industry, and we need to continue with that into the future.
Well, are you troubled that hybrids really haven't set the world on fire? Electric cars, although there is an availability issue that regards them, but again, didn't set the world on fire because those two components, EVs and hybrids, are crucial to be able to meet the 54.5 mpg standard.
Well, actually, it's very, very interesting from the EPA and the DOT and recent analysis of meeting the 54.5 mpg standard. It's actually going to be met primarily. 80% of the vehicle fleet in 2025 to meet the standards will be rather conventional gasoline vehicle engine, albeit very sophisticated and very efficient gasoline engines, but the internal combustion engine, the gasoline conventional engine is far from dead. Only about 3%, according to the agency analysis, battery electrics are needed to meet the standard. I think battery electrics are going to do much better than that, but in order to comply, we just need 3%. Am I troubled by the current market for electrics and hybrids? Absolutely not. I think it's absolutely crazy for anybody to make predictions about what the electric vehicle market is going to be based upon 1 full year's of sales.
I agree. Right.
Okay.
Right. You can't do that. But
You can't.
the hybrid thing, we've had hybrids for over a decade now, and they're still 2%-ish of the market.
Yeah, and hybrids are getting better. They're getting more models. The price is coming down, so I think hybrids will do fine. I think one of the ironic things about the higher fuel efficiency standards is that now hybrids have competition from very efficient gasoline engine vehicle technologies, right? Like the EcoBoost engines that Ford has, SkyActiv, Mazda, and all the other different the names and labels for these. But that's ironic, but that's good. Hybrids will get better. Hybrids will have more models. The technology is getting cheaper, and they'll come along, I'm quite confident.
Hey, we've got some questions here from the chat room I'd love to get to.
Okay.
Herman the German says, can gas prices in the U.S. reach sustained prices that will change American driving and buying behavior for the long term?
Well, I think it's very interesting is that oil prices really started to creep up in 2005. And so obviously it peaked at $140 a barrel oil in early of 2008, I believe. And if you look at the data, driving habits and purchase habits have actually radically shifted, and that's a good thing.
How do you measure that? What do you see change?
Driving. Actually, the amount of driving we do in the United States has flattened. That means on a per capita basis over the last 5 years, it's actually flattened and dropped. People are driving less because of the higher cost of driving.
Is it that, or is it the recession? Because we've seen this in the past too. You know, gasoline consumption, even traffic fatalities will go down during a recession, and then when the economy comes charging back, it may not go back to that prior level, but it goes back up again.
We actually start seeing the trend on driving happen before the recession. There's also probably some demographic things occurring. There's also probably just the fact that how much more driving can you do, right? So there's a limit to how much driving we can do.
That's right.
And speak about fuel efficiency and consumer behavior, absolutely, consumers have shifted their habits in terms of buying what kind of products they buy. Remember in 2005, truck-based SUVs, the true truck-based SUVs, were 15% of the market. Today, they're half of that size, 7.5% of the market. Everything that you think of as an SUV is really a crossover utility vehicle, a tall station wagon. So let's take the Chevy Equinox, for example, replace the Chevy Trailblazer. 50% improvement in fuel efficiency when you went to that car-based crossover. No one wants the Trailblazer. That's no longer in the marketplace in the new vehicles, but clearly driver habits and purchase habits have dramatically shifted over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah, good point. Sean Walsh from Woodbridge, Virginia says his current vehicle is a 2008 Saturn Outlook. He averages under 10,000 miles a year. He said, if I had to drive more, I'd purchase a vehicle with better mileage, but he likes the flexibility of a larger vehicle. Oh, yeah. He said, why should my choice to buy this type of vehicle be limited by what he calls excessive CAFE standards?
Yeah, I think the great news about these new fuel economy standards is that they're actually going to expand choice of fuel efficient options in every type of vehicle. I'll get a little wonky on you, John, but
go ahead.
Stay with me, okay?
Yeah.
So the new standards are footprint based. They're size based. That means the manufacturer does not have any advantage to sell small cars to compensate for bigger cars, because no matter what size of fleet you build, you have to increase the fuel efficiency of every size model. What does that mean? That means that your crossover utility vehicle, your compact car, your mid-size car, your pickup truck, all have to improve fuel economy, which means that there's going to be an expansion of choice. So next time you go to the dealership, absolutely. Next time you go look into look for a car or a crossover utility vehicle or pickup, you will have the option. You almost certainly will be buying a more fuel efficient vehicle than what you currently have, and you will certainly have a lot more choices available to you in terms of what level of fuel efficiency you want.
Good. Ready Kilowatt. there's a good internet name nice for name, you. Says. Yeah. He asks, aren't new passenger cars in California incredibly clean? Shouldn't CARB spend less time regulating new cars and spend more time regulating the real polluters, industry and residents?
Well, when it comes to California, 90% of Californians still breathe unhealthy air, okay? That means that we got to leave no stone unturned looking for cost-effective reductions of smog-forming pollutants. And that's exactly what traditionally California has done really for the last 4 or 5 decades. It's not just cars, it's the fuels they run on. California has pioneered cleaner burning gasoline. It's not just tailpipes, it's smokestacks. We have very stringent regulations on smokestacks. It's backyard barbecues. I think there's all kinds of stories on California, but the fact of the matter is, I grew up in Southern California during the 70s. Air was horrendous. Stage 1 smog alerts. They would not let you outside for recess. Okay,
wow. That's really how bad it was. So we've made huge progress.
Huge progress. And cars and the auto industry, absolutely a huge part of that, of contributing to that.
In fact, my
progress.
argument is there's probably no American alive today who's ever breathed air as clean as it is right now.
I can't go all the way back in history, but
well, no, I say alive today. Yeah. People alive today.
Yeah. Smog was absolutely terrible after World War II. We hear those stories. Absolutely horrendous. And we've, through technology, innovation, regulations, which drive that innovation, really have made huge progress. And it's great for our economy, great for jobs, and great for everybody who breathes air. It's just a tremendous success story.
Yeah. Roland, we got to wrap it up. I could talk to you for hours, man, but
likewise.
Thanks so much for stopping by. Always a pleasure talking with you. Okay.
Oh, likewise. Thank you, John.
Take care. Folks, we'll be right back with our next guest in just a moment. That was great.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's great.
The clean diesels are coming. The number of clean diesel light vehicle models offered to North Americans will double by 2014. When given the choice, 1 in 3 customers choose clean diesel over gasoline engines. Why? Because of lower total cost of ownership, recouping premium costs in less than 18 months, longer range and better fuel mileage, lower CO2 emissions. Clean diesel, good, economical, functional. Bosch, invented for life.
Fix it or find a new job, all right?
I got it. I'm sorry.
These people, huh?
I found that anger is the enemy of instruction.
You don't know the egos that I have to deal with.
You're probably right.
Thank you. Whoever you are.
I'm pretty sure that was Phil Jackson. He's quite famous. million championships, triangle offense innovator.
The Audi A8, named Best Large Luxury Sedan.
Nice wheels, Zen Master.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm talking right now with Frank Scambati. He's the Director of Marketing for Chassis Systems and Controls in North America for the Robert Bosch Company. Frank, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, John. Really appreciate it.
Chassis controls, so that's everything that means that you control when the car is moving. Is that
Basically,
right?
Yeah, we have actually 3 different product areas that we focus on in chassis controls. We do active safety, and we do passive safety, and then we have our newest product area is driver assistance, advanced driver assistance.
So let's go through that, because I think that's some of the most exciting stuff going on
Certainly.
right now in the industry.
Certainly. Driver assistance for us is it's an exciting new area. I think most of the OEMs are really involved in it. We're pretty excited because what we have is with our sensor sets, whether it's radar or video, we can come to the market and bring some of these advanced safety technologies to mitigate or even avoid certain crashes.
So you're talking about lane departure warning if you drift out of the lane, and
exactly,
even nudging you back into your lane. What do you call that technology?
We call it lane keeping support. So basically what you do is you have a forward-looking camera and you can determine the lanes where you're driving, and with the lane departure warning, you can then supplement that with what we call lane keeping assist, which is a slight nudge back into the lane.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting technology.
And adaptive cruise control just keeps getting better and better. When it first came out, a decade or so ago, it worked, but these days it seems to be working better. And now we've got systems that will bring you to a complete stop where you don't have to, and if you don't come to a complete stop, still rolling slowly, the car will pick up and go back to where you had set the speed earlier.
That's very true. At Bosch, we call that adaptive cruise control stop and go. So you're literally coming to a stop or a standstill, and you can actually then go forward when the vehicle or the traffic in front of you moves forward with you. And through a radar-based solution, you can do that in today's vehicles, almost seamless.
So what's gotten better? Is it the radar? Is it just the calibration? Is it just more comfort level of pushing the envelope?
Well, John, significant developments have occurred in radar technology. We are currently in our 4th generation long-range radar, as we call it, but we also do a mid-range radar, which is, for shorter distances. Mainly long-range radar is something that we've developed. I think what we're seeing is that it really works well when you need to have, your dangerous, your actual distance to range is needed to be significant, and this is in higher speeds, Autobahn traffic, for example. Mid-range radar, which we actually can adapt not only to forward-looking vehicle, we can also do it for rearward for things like cross-traffic alert, blind spot detection, or lane change assist.
I got to tell you, I've been really playing around a lot with ACC, Adaptive Cruise Control, and for the first few days, man, I had my foot above the brake because it's not that I didn't trust the system, but man, I didn't trust the system.
John, I had the same experience. When I first actually drove a vehicle with ACC stop and go, it is a bit unnerving because it's almost as if you have to learn to drive the vehicle again. Not totally, but I think once you've experienced it and once you've actually been sitting in a heavily traffic area with stop and go, I don't think you want to be in a car without it. I really don't.
Yeah. The next step's got to be steering too, and I know Mercedes and Audi have talked about, I think they call it like traffic jam assist. I've got to believe this is something that you're looking at.
Yeah, you're starting to lead into this thing, and we can touch on that later, a little bit of this semi-autonomous driving. And with traffic jam assist, what we can do is we have a technology that we also have, again, it's using the fusion, the sensor data fusion of not only radar but video to try and assist while you're in traffic jams. It's a really neat technology, and it's something that we're pretty excited about.
Yeah, I got to believe it. I keep saying autonomous technology is coming a whole lot faster than most people realize.
I mean, it's in principle, it's there. Let's look at the electronic stability control systems that you have in the vehicles today. I mean, they're doing some level of autonomy, where they're sensing the situation of the vehicle and doing some things maybe that you and I aren't aware of, but are good things because they're making cars much more safer.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought of that. Hey, we got some questions here from our chat room. Chuck Grenchie from Mount Pleasant, South Carolina asks, he's asking about diesels. You're not the diesel guy,
no,
are you?
Actually, unfortunately not.
Let me see what else is here. Diesel. More diesel stuff. Gosh, we should get Lars back here. Here's Al, another diesel one. These are all diesel ones. Yeah. Okay, so what else? Let me just see if there's anything else here.
I think one thing that I would maybe just bring into the conversation is in the plenary session this morning, they touched on briefly about distracted driver. And one of the things that Adrian Lund mentioned, which I fully agree with, is that...
And we should mention he's with the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, right?
Thank you, John. Sorry about that. But what we find at Bosch is that distracted drivers could also be supplemented with these advanced driver assistance. I mean, if you're getting into a situation where you're trying to avoid a crash, mitigate or even avoid it altogether, with our forward-looking cameras and with our forward-looking radars, long-range radar or mid-range radar, it's something that actually can help supplement. And we all know that, and his point was having to do with teenagers and actually younger drivers. So we think that it is a technology that can help maybe reduce those fatalities or at least mitigate and avoid these kind of crash conditions.
What do you make of this system that they've got in Europe called Sartre, where you platoon, have a line of cars behind a lead truck, so you have a real live driver, and then the cars will follow wherever the truck goes autonomously? Well,
I think these are this is another good point, John, you bring up. It's leading us to this world of autonomous driving. I mean, it's interesting. Again, this description you described was it having to do with forward-looking radars and cameras to supplement the situation. But yeah, it's exciting, I think.
Well, I think it's another step, like you say, because maybe people will feel more comfortable if they know there's a human being that's leading the way than just leaving it to the computer.
Absolutely.
Let's see here.
I think that's the biggest thing with some of these advanced driver's assist technologies is overcoming let's say, the lack of awareness, the new, and the same thing was seen when we brought on ABS or ESC or any of these advanced safety systems. You just have to come over these, let's say, a bit of the unawareness and some nervous behavior.
Have you driven in these autonomous cars?
No, I haven't myself. We've been watching it and monitoring the system closely. We have some of our research facilities out in Palo Alto, California, where they're much closer to the activity. But from the marketing side, we need to be involved just to understand where the market may be going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of this. I think it's going to be transformative when it finally comes in. I know there's probably more legal and insurance issues than there are technical ones.
Definitely. I think that's going to be the biggest issues. I was involved, you've probably heard the state of Nevada had issued this legislation where they're going to actually issue a driver's license for autonomous vehicle driving.
Right.
There was interesting discussions because I sat in on some of the sessions, and mainly what the concerns were, not the technical issues, it was the legal side of how to do that.
Do you think Nevada will adopt that kind of a system where you can have autonomous vehicles?
Definitely. I think that's coming. And then there's some announcements recently in the press, the state of Florida, and even I heard Hawaii actually is looking at it.
Unbelievable. Well, Frank, thanks so much for stopping by and bringing us up to speed on all that. Like I said, I find it very interesting technology.
Well, thanks a lot, John. It was appreciated.
Okay, very good.
To see you.
Sure thing. Hey, we've got one more interview coming up, folks. Stick with us because it's going to be Margot Oge from the EPA.
Oh, yeah. Hey, right, Matt, over here. The ones I grew up were all the way in the back. 68 Camaro. Right there. We have the phone number. We have the phone number.
Okay, so give him Pat's number. Dennis Lee? No, I didn't. But I know he spoke out of turn.
Okay.
Especially with one popular one.
Welcome back. I'm speaking right now with Margot Oge, the Director of the Office of Transportation and Air Quality at the Environmental Protection Agency. Margot, great having you back here.
Nice seeing you, John.
I always love talking with you.
Thank you.
So, lots of issues affecting the EPA. I got to imagine that a lot of your time has been involved with the fuel economy standards.
The fuel economy greenhouse gas standards, yes. Yes.
There's been public hearings going on around the country. What kind of feedback are you getting?
I just came back from San Francisco, so we had 3 public hearings. The first public hearing was in the right city that we should have the first public hearing, which was Detroit, Michigan, the birth of the automotive industry. Then we went to Philadelphia, and a couple of days ago we had the 3rd and last public hearing in San Francisco. I have been doing this job, I'm not going to tell you how many years because that will give you out my age, for many, many years. I have not seen a more overwhelming support throughout, from the public, the stakeholders, NGOs, as I have seen at these 3 public hearings. We had young people. We had a new group that is called Raging Grannies. Actually, we had 4 grandmothers. Grandmothers, I won't tell you their age, dressed up. They came to testify and they sang 2 songs. Apparently, there is a group.
They sang songs at a public hearing?
Songs about clean cars. But seriously, we had over 400 participants. Anywhere from public citizens, representing, young people, religious groups. For the first time, I went to public hearings with a religious take. We had veterans, including former generals testifying. Clearly, we had the car industry, we had suppliers, NGOs, the dealers, the National Dealers Association. And overall, I thought it was a pretty broad support.
But of course, no one's going to argue for lower, fuel economy standards. And I think if you asked anybody, would you like to have a car that gets better fuel economy? Of course, everybody would. The cost, the issue, as you know, comes down to cost and how quickly can the automakers bring the technology in to be able to do this.
Yeah, clearly. We think that will be an additional $2,000 in 2025. So when you buy a vehicle in 2025, an estimate, some of it will be lower, some of it will be higher, will be about $2,000. The savings that you will have because of fuel savings for the life of that vehicle will be over $6,000 in fuel savings, and net benefits will be about $4,400. So clearly, the benefits of the program are significant vis-a-vis the cost of the program.
The fuel economy savings, is that based on today's fuel prices?
That's another very good point. So we're assuming that the gasoline and diesel prices in 2025 will be about the same. EIA just came out with their 2012 estimate, and they are suggesting an additional 30 cents a gallon higher than what we had assumed in our proposal.
For this year or for 2025?
For their 2012 estimate is for 2025. We use their 2011 estimate for 2025. So clearly here what we're saying is if gasoline prices are about the same, the consumer will cut the fuel cost about half at the pump. Will cost more upfront, but you'll pocket over $4,000 in net fuel savings, assuming gasoline are $3 a gallon.
Of course, the national auto dealers have said, whoa, not so fast, because $2,000 is still going to be a significant impact on pricing, and they don't seem to be as supportive of the standards as everybody else might be.
So. We're talking about $2,000 cost. We're not talking about price. So if you were an OEM, you would have to make decisions how to price your new vehicles and where to put these advanced technologies. Now, every vehicle will have to have some improvement. Okay, but how the OEMs are going to price those standards, only they know, and there are competitive issues. What I know is that 13 OEMs that represent 90% of the sales of cars in the United States support this standard for a couple of reasons. First, this is a 50-state program, and they like the national program. It harmonizes with EPA, with NHTSA, and California. Second, it gives them a certainty to invest, for a long period of time. As you know, these technologies that we're talking about are pretty expensive, so they have to have a certainty for their investments. And finally, it provides them with another look at the standard, because we all know 2025 is a long time from now. So in 2018, the agencies, Department of Transportation, Environmental Protection Agency, will reassess all these factors. Well, did we do it right? Have things changed? Should we adjust the standard upwards, downwards, or leave it the same? So I think that, again, gives them the certainty of making investments. The other thing, obviously you're here and you're looking at all these cars. I was at the Detroit Auto Show. I must tell you, it must be a great time to be an automotive engineer. I wish I was younger and I could just start today and go to one of these companies. They must have so much fun. What I saw at the Detroit Auto Show, and I haven't had the chance to look at what's going on here, but I can see the cars. There is a lot of excitement about better diesel engines, better gasoline engines, better transmissions, lighter weight materials, and clearly, a lot of effort on hybrids, plug-ins, and electric vehicles.
I agree. I don't think it's ever been a better time. There's so much new technology, so many different powertrains, even inside the car with all the different technology going in for the benefit of people inside as well. Hey, we've got some questions coming in here. Glenn asks, why have the feds not put more effort into reducing the cost of diesel in the U.S. so it would make more sense to buy a diesel? Well, I guess you don't get involved in setting prices.
But I think what he's talking about probably is what's going on in Europe. In Europe, they tax the fuel and actually the actual vehicle, the size of the engine, in such a way to promote certain, clean, fuel-efficient technologies. And that's what they do in Europe. Unfortunately, or fortunately, EPA is not in charge of gasoline and diesel pricing and taxation issues. But as you know, taxing fuel in this country is a whole different story.
It's a whole different story, but here's a question exactly about that. Wilson asks, will the government increase the gasoline tax to make up for the loss of revenue as we get more fuel-efficient vehicles that don't use as much gasoline?
Yeah, that's a whole different story also. As you know, there is an effort to update the transportation bill. We still don't have, a 5-6 year transportation bill. These are all very important issues that they're raising, but again, it's not in my preview.
That's right. Herman the German from 30,000 feet wants to know, how much is transportation responsible for greenhouse gases, whether it's in the tailpipe or in production or whatnot?
So transportation in the United States is about 1/3 of the greenhouse gas
that's everything, ships and trains and planes.
Yeah, exactly. And light duty cars is about 60% of that.
Okay, so 18, not quite 20%.
Yeah, 20%. And then the heavy duty trucks, the medium and heavy duty trucks is an additional 20%. So these are the two big sectors.
Gotcha. Let's see what else we might have here. Chuck Grenche from South Carolina says, it appears that the U.S. government is championing electric vehicles. He says, I'm trying to cut it down here, shouldn't the government just stay out of legislating EV initiatives and just set the goal that manufacturers should hit regardless of technology?
So our standards are performance-based standards. So in the 54.5 MPG standard, 163 grams per mile equivalent of CO2 is a performance-based standard. We have estimated that about 90% of the standard is going to be met with conventional gasoline and diesel engines, about 9% hybrids in 2025, and 1% electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. So we do have a performance-based standard. On the other hand, though, when you look at these advanced technologies, and what I'm talking about is fuel cells, electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, the cost and other challenges that these technologies are facing is huge. So the question is, what is the appropriate set of incentives, not mandates, incentives to help these technologies to be introduced in the marketplace so that you would have a level playing field later on when it comes to cost. Companies like General Motors, Nissan are spending significant amount of money investing on these advanced technologies. The hope is that the cost will come down. So the question is, what is the role of the government putting incentives in the marketplace for these new technologies that offer the promise of zero tailpipe emissions, and reducing significantly the importation of oil, so we keep the money in this country instead of sending it to other countries that they may not be as friendly towards us as.
When you say that hybrids will account for 9% of the mix in 2025, how do you define that? Is that cars with electric assist, the e-assist, for example, that General Motors has, or how do you define a hybrid?
So the stop-start, for us is a strategy, but it's not a hybrid. So to us, the definition of hybrid is the mild and strong hybrids that you are seeing across the market.
So the mild hybrids,
yes,
you include there too. Okay, very interesting. Here's a question that I get asked so much. Jay Smith from Altoona, Pennsylvania wants to know, why can't European diesel standards be adopted for the U.S., thereby allowing a smoother transition to the more efficient use of fuel?
Well, today we have clean diesel, both fuel and engines. So the diesel engines can compete with the cleanest gasoline or natural gas engine. The Europeans have similar requirements for their fuel, clean fuel, and similar requirements for both nitrogen oxides and particulates. So I think we have harmonized on diesel with Europe.
Yeah, in fact, we had Lars Ulrich in here from Bosch earlier saying that when they get to Euro 6, they're almost the same.
All 99% we're there.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, I tell people, if you told me that you could say diesel and clean together in one sentence,
nobody would have believed it.
I said, you're crazy, there's no such thing. But today you can say that. And diesel is doing very well in the United States.
Because diesels now have to meet the same emission standards as gasoline engines.
But as you know, they are more efficient. At least 20% plus than gasoline engines. So they offer, for some of the OEMs, another avenue to meet the greenhouse gas fuel economy standards.
Margot, I could talk to you all day long. It's just so interesting to hear from you. I want to thank you so much for stopping by. I know how busy you are here, but I really appreciate the time that you've taken.
Well, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks again, Margot.
Take care.
Hold fast there, folks. We're going to bring Lars Ulrich back because we got a ton of diesel questions. We'll get to those in just a moment.
And he's right. You know, you get older, you get kids. I had I used to do well. My son, second.
Well, we've brought Lars Ulrich back because we got a ton of diesel questions. The show should be over, but we're going to go rapid fire style here and just go through some of these. Herman the German says, are U.S. diesel emission regulations rational if the goal is to get more diesels on the road?
Well, actually, U.S. emission regulations are achievable. And we actually made clean diesels clean. That's what we have been focusing on the last 10 years. With criteria emissions over 90% reduction. which is a significant step. No other technology can say that. And also going forward, clean diesel will become into the SULEV area by the 2016-2018 timeframe, and that shows you how much potential clean diesel has in the US to go. And just the questions alone which are coming in just show how much interest is out there.
No question. And we got to tell everybody, because I love saying it, when he says SULEV, he means super ultra low emissions vehicle.
That is correct. Something which nobody would have believed before from clean diesel vehicles.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about this, but Chuck Grenche wants to know, you say that clean diesels will double in the next 2 years. What percentages are they at now, and which manufacturers are the new ones going to come from?
Yes, there are several numbers which we take a look at. We are roughly right now at a 3% market share. So meaning 3% of the total, close to 12 million vehicles which are sold in North America are clean diesels. This number will increase. If you look at it from a take rate perspective, so where consumers have the option between a gas and a diesel car, every third consumer already chooses clean diesel. And that goes very close in alignment with a consumer consideration purchasing index which we have. Where also when consumers go into the dealership and look for new technologies or look for a vehicle, they basically, every third consumer would be considering to purchase a clean diesel. So we estimate that this will continue on growing, and that in a market where there are no incentives given to clean diesel technology.
That's a great point. Yeah. Unlike hybrids when they first came out, or electrics right now.
Exactly, and that's just based on the consumer starting to understand the functionality portion of the clean diesel, and also understanding what their drive style is. So if you live in a city environment, hybrid, electric cars are perfect. If you live like 57% of the population in North America living in the rural area, clean diesel, gasoline direct injection is a very good option.
Yeah, that's a great point about the no incentives on diesels, and yet they're selling better than hybrids. Dave Foley from Alberta, Canada. Miradart, all right. He says, Bosch seems to be banking on diesel power acceptance. Will the doubling of diesel availability mean the doubling of sales? Well, yeah, you just said that it will.
Yeah, it will. I mean, we just see that many brands are coming more into the market.
Right.
It will double by 2016, and by that we increase the number of available vehicles. By that, the choice for the consumers, and as the interest increases from the consumers, that will automatically have an impact on the sales numbers.
Right, and getting back to his point, he says what you're saying is more people will buy diesels. It's not just going to give a greater choice to those who already buy them.
Exactly.
Right. So, and since he's from Canada, well, let's talk Canada and Mexico a minute. How are diesel sales going there?
Well, it's a good question. Canada and Mexico also are adopting a lot of these emission regulations from the US. For example, both countries have introduced ultra-low sulfur diesel as well. So we are able to sell clean diesel vehicles now also in Canada as well as Mexico. And we anticipate this is starting to catch on there as well.
That's a great point.
Canada has always been strong in diesels.
Right, always been strong. And that's a great point. You need to take the sulfur out to have the technology to really make these things clean.
Exactly.
Let's see. Why is it that diesel-powered passenger cars and trucks cost an astonishing amount of money compared to their internal combustion engine gasoline counterparts? I think you're saying that's not really the case.
No, you actually have to look at the specific vehicles. If you look at the passenger car segment, like for example a Jetta TDI or an Audi A3 is somewhere in the range of $1,200 add-on cost.
Maybe he's getting at the big heavy diesels. I should say the big heavy pickups.
The medium-duty pickups,
right.
yes.
Those are pretty expensive engines.
Those are more expensive. That's correct. A portion of that is clearly that comparison an 8-cylinder engine with a 4-cylinder on a passenger car. But then also from an after-treatment perspective, there are certain costs added to a clean diesel vehicle, but the consumer always has to look at it from a total cost of owner perspective. You always have that add-on cost outweighed by the fuel consumption savings as well as the higher residual value which you achieve when you sell this vehicle.
Alan in Brisbane, Australia wants to know, what's the next big step in clean diesel? We see direct injection for gasoline engines. What's next for diesels?
That's an excellent
question.
It
is a great question.
Well, clean diesels are not at the end of the rope. We can say that for sure. We have talked a little bit about SULEV. That's a big thing where diesels will go. But then also we have all these technologies refinements, which, for example, gasoline direct technology has up their sleeves. We still have up our sleeves as well. So downsizing of engine, down speeding of engine, waste heat recovery, all those kind of things can be implemented in clean diesel engines to make them even more efficient than they are today.
Yeah. Real good. With that, we're going to wrap it up. Lars, thanks for coming back, because I'm sure everybody who had their questions submitted would like to have gotten them answered. But thanks for having joined us right now, folks. We'll wrap up in just a sec, but a quick commercial break.
The clean diesels are coming. The number of clean diesel light vehicle models offered to North Americans will double by 2014. When given the choice, 1 in 3 customers choose clean diesel over gasoline engines. Why? Because of lower total cost of ownership, recouping premium costs in less than 18 months, longer range and better fuel mileage, lower CO2 emissions. Clean diesel, good, economical, functional. Bosch, invented for life.
Fix it or find a new job, all right?
I got it. I'm sorry.
These people, huh?
I found that anger is the enemy of instruction.
You don't know the egos that I have to deal with.
You're probably right.
Thank you. Whoever you are.
I'm pretty sure that was still Jackson. It's quite famous. 1,000,000 championships, triangle offense innovator.
The Audi A8, named best large luxury sedan.
Nice wheels, Zen Master.
Thank you, Todd.
Well, thanks, folks, for having stuck with us through this live webcast from the Washington, D.C. Auto Show. Special thanks especially to our signature sponsor, Bosch, for this event, and we've got to thank Audi as well. Of course, we got to thank everybody who appeared on the show, and we loved the questions that we got. I hope you enjoyed the show. Stay tuned for more. With this, I'm signing off. John McElroy for Autoline Live from the 2012 Washington, D.C. Auto Show.
Autoline Live from the Washington, D.C. Auto Show is brought to you by our signature sponsor, Bosch. The number of clean diesel models in North America will double by 2014. Bosch Clean Diesel. Good, clean, fun. And also by Audi. Truth in engineering.